The U.S. Supreme Court dealing the Trump administration a significant blow on immigration enforcement, upholding a block on National Guard deployments in Chicago. John Yoo, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, UC Berkeley law professor, and former law clerk to Justice Clarence Thomas, joining us. And we certainly appreciate that. Merry Christmas Eve and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, my friend. This is one of those circumstances where I'm not so sure that this is more than a pause. They're simply letting things play out. Do I have that right?
Merry Christmas to you, Kevin, and everyone there. I think you're right. You could say the Supreme Court left a lump of coal in President Trump's stocking, but it's not that big a lump. It's a kind of a small lump. And President Trump can do a few things, as you suggest, to get around or move forward past this decision. It is a decision that extends beyond just Chicago, because the logic of this case that President Trump cannot deploy the National Guard in a place like Chicago to protect ICE agents and ICE facilities would apply to the other parts of the country, like Los Angeles, where other courts have, till now, upheld those deployments. But I think that the point here is that the court's decision is narrow and it's temporary. The court here has said President Trump might have reasonably said he can't get these laws enforced because of resistance, because of attacks on federal buildings, but he has to try with the regular armed forces first before he calls up the National Guard to try to enforce those laws.
Let me get you to weigh in, Professor Yoo, on what the High Court said. I just want to read this. This is from the majority ruling. At this preliminary stage, the government has failed to identify a source of authority that would allow the military to execute the laws in Illinois. What I took from that was a source of authority. Can you break that down for us briefly?
Yeah, so President Trump initially recently said, look, I'm trying to enforce the laws with ICE agents, with federal law enforcement, and I can't do it, so I need to call the National Guard. But the statute says the president has to be unable to enforce the law with regular forces. What does regular forces mean? We don't know. The Supreme Court has never decided that question before yesterday. The Supreme Court now says regular forces means you have to try with the regular armed forces first before you can bring out the National Guard. So the unintended consequence here might be that the president is going to have to call the 82nd Airborne or the Marines or the 101st Airborne Division, as, for example, President Eisenhower did after Brown versus Board of Education in the South to enforce desegregation. President Trump might have to do that first in order to protect those federal buildings, those ICE agents. And then if they fail, he can then call out the National Guard.
Got it. J.B. Pritzker, the governor in the state of Illinois, is saying this. Today is a big win for Illinois and American democracy. This is an important step in curbing the Trump administration's consistent abuse of power and slowing Trump's march toward authoritarianism. That's purely political. I think the president has obviously tried to work within the framework of the law as his legal eagles have seen it. 15 seconds or so, what happens from here? And I guess I answered my own question when I say I'm not surprised by Pritzker's response, and I guess you aren't either.
I'm not. He's, of course, injecting a lot of heated political rhetoric into this. Yeah. But what's going to happen? Trump will, of course, now have the right to go to the Supreme Court on the full merits. As you said, Kevin, this is just preliminary. He may be able to get the full court to reverse this preliminary decision. But second, and I think more worrisome, is the Supreme Court is essentially inviting President Trump to send regular armed troops and deploy those to Chicago and Los Angeles before he can send the National Guard. I think a governor would rather have National Guard troops than the 82nd Airborne and the Marine Corps patrolling the streets of Chicago.
Yeah, especially when you think about the historic nature of the pictures, what the video might look like moving forward. It's an interesting conundrum. Obviously, we'll be watching how the court moves forward and the administration as they continue to try to make this happen. Professor Yoo, always a pleasure, my friend. Merry Christmas. We'll see you again soon.
Great seeing you, Kevin. Happy holidays.
Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.